They brought him to me on a stretcher made of torn flak canvas and bayonet shafts, screaming through a throat that had no business still producing sound. I had treated Lasburns melted to bone. I had sutured ruptured lungs in trenches filled with freezing mud. But this was different. There was no battlefield wound I could name in what writhed beneath his skin. We were stationed on Vandor Prime, 3rd Line Field Hospital, 14th Vaskaran Infantry. A mud world, a cold world. The kind of world where a man's breath came out like ghosts. I remember the air that morning. Heavy, metallic, like the taste of coin on the tongue. The patient's name, at least on his ident tags, was Trooper Enric Vale, 22, no prior mutation record, clean gene seal. He should have been ordinary, but his flesh moved, not twitched, not convulsed, not spasmed. It shifted, as if something beneath it was shaping him from the inside. His right arm bulged as though a second limb tried to grow beneath the first. Veins swelled and darkened. His skin shone wet, stretched to near tearing. The other medics held him down, but he hardly seemed to notice them. His eyes, saints preserve me, his eyes were fixed on me. "Doctor," he rasped, "it's hungry. Not I'm hungry. It." I ordered restraints. We have regulations for plague exposure, warp infiltration, xenospore infection, but none of them applied. His blood tests returned static. No cells. No structure. Just red noise. The Auspex sensors buzzed with interference when brought near him. Even the chirurgeon's servo skulls backed away. Something in him rejected being understood. I tried sedation. It did nothing. He continued speaking, voice cracking like ice. "It grows when I sleep. It listens when I think. It knows you now." The temperature in the tent dropped. I swear by the God Emperor, it dropped. My breath fogged the air. The others pretended not to notice. The colonel arrived moments later, flanked by commissarial escort. His face was stone, but I saw the fear in his jawline. "Surgeon," he said, "does this constitute contamination?" I should have said yes. I should have ordered incineration. But the flesh, Emperor, help me, the flesh had begun forming patterns, deliberate shapes beneath the skin, spirals, sigils, biological script, language. "No," I said, "not yet. I can still learn what it is." That was the moment we were lost. The patient went still then, breathing slow, too slow to sustain life. Then, slowly, his ribcage began to rise and fall again, but not with his lungs. Something inside him was breathing for him. The medics stepped back in horror. I leaned closer. The skin at his chest split, not torn, opened, like a flower. And something looked back at me from inside. We sealed the tent. Not because protocol demanded it. Protocol would have required immediate execution and cremation, but because none of us were able to move. Not truly. We just stood there, circling the cot-like penitents around a shrine no one wanted to worship at. The thing in Vale's chest pulsed, a slow, steady rhythm that did not match his heartbeat. It was deeper, more deliberate, a rhythm like breathing through soil. The air thickened until each breath felt like swallowing warm dust. Commissar Lyrane was the first to break. "Surgeon," he said, jaw locked to keep fear from leaking into his voice. "Explain." I could not. So I did what all practitioners of battlefield medicine learn to do. I acted as though I understood everything. I ordered everyone back. I retrieved the bone saw, the sanitizing torch, and 3 restraints more suited for convicts than soldiers. The tent was silent, except for Vale's breathing, and the other breathing inside him. He watched me as I worked. His pupils were dilated, black swallowing iris. The sclera had turned grey, like stone dust. "It came from the trenches," he whispered. "In the mud, in the bodies." I paused. "What did?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, a sound escaped him. Low, wet, like meat stretching. I stepped around to his side and saw his forearm bulging again. But this time we heard it. A second heartbeat, faint beneath the first. A heartbeat not his own. Private Wren, my youngest assistant, broke into a retching sob. The commissar unholstered his bolt pistol. "No," I snapped. "If you fire, the concussion will rupture whatever that is. If it's airborne—" I didn't finish. I didn't need to. We all imagined the same outcome. The colonel radioed command. Static answered him. Not interference, patterned static, rhythmic, intentional. The Vox array was being jammed by something alive. The order came from the commissar instead. Quarantine perimeter. Any man who crosses without authorization is to be shot. Guardsmen moved outside, forming a ring of laser guns and bayonets around canvas walls. The wind howled across the encampment like a mouth blowing over the lip of a bottle. And through that sound, we heard whispering. From the patient, from the tent fabric, from the very ground. Vale's body relaxed, as though whatever was inside him had grown comfortable. His breathing synced with the second rhythm. He smiled, not a human smile, a knowing one. "It's awake now," he said. "It knows your names." My blood went cold. "How many?" I asked. His voice trembled like a prayer chanted backward. "All the bodies buried in the mud, all the fallen, all we left behind. They're not dead anymore. They're listening." The commissar raised his pistol again. This time, I did not stop him. But before the shot could fire, the ground outside began to move. Not shake, not quake. Shift, as if something beneath the soil was crawling upward. The first scream came from outside the tent, short, cut off halfway, not the long kind a man gives when he is dying. The sharp, startled sound of someone who has seen something they do not understand. Then came the rifle fire. Las bolts hissed, sharp flashes lighting the canvas walls blood red with every discharge. Shadows jerked and lunged, bodies moving fast and wrong. Someone shouted orders, someone else sobbed. The perimeter was breaking. Commissar Lyrane tore open the tent flap, pistol ready, but he froze. We all did. The ground was rising, the mud, the frozen clay, the churned bodies buried beneath it. All of it was heaving upward as though something beneath the earth had begun to breathe. A slow, heavy inhalation that sucked the air from our lungs. "Emperor, save us," Private Wren whispered. I saw hands push up through the soil. Human hands, pale, mud-slick, fingers clawing for the surface. Then another, and another, dozens. But these were not corpses returning as plague zombies or rotwalkers. Their skin writhed with the same living movement I had seen beneath veils. Muscles surged like tides beneath flesh. Bones flexed, limbs extended too far. The dead were waking, but not as themselves. Vale began to laugh. Not hysterically, not madly, knowingly. "It needed a seed," he said. "I was first, but not the last." The commissar spun and pressed the barrel of his bolt pistol to the soldier's forehead. Silence. I expected fear, pleading, prayer. Vale only whispered, "You're already breathing it." The tent walls rustled, not from wind, from pressure. Something was pushing against the canvas from the outside. The colonel barked, "Fall back to the Medicaid bunker, regroup, move." And we did. We ran. Not in formation, not with discipline. We ran like men chased by something they could not name. Outside, the ground was a battlefield of horrors, half-born. Shapes crawled free of the mud, some still wearing rusted dog tags, others little more than skeletons resheathed in fresh muscle. Their movements synchronized, slow and smooth, like puppets pulled on invisible strings. Not a horde, not a frenzy, a march, deliberate, ordered. The commissar fired. A bolt round detonated a corpse's chest, yet the flesh flowed, knitting, pulling itself tight again. Regeneration, instant, hungry. The colonel grabbed my shoulder, breath ragged. "Surgeon, what is this?" I could only answer the truth. Something that learns from the dead. As we neared the Medici bunker, the Vox beacon crackled back to life. But it was not command. It was a voice speaking through static. "Do not sleep. Do not bleed. Do not let the soil touch your skin. Then the message repeated, 3 times, identical, measured, warned. We sealed the bunker door behind us, and for the first time since the war began, I prayed. The Medici bunker was built for bombardments, not for what followed us. Its walls were plasteel and ceramite, reinforced to withstand artillery barrage and orbital shrapnel. Inside, the lights flickered with a sickly yellow glow, powered by a generator that always sounded on the edge of failure. I had worked in that bunker for weeks, but now it felt too small, too close, too warm, as if the air itself had begun to breathe alongside us. The colonel sealed the bulkhead door. 6 turns of the wheel, pressure lock, a hiss of compressed air. Still, I felt the ground beneath us moving. The surviving guardsmen collapsed where they stood, panting. Some broke into quiet prayers. Others stared at their own hands, as if questioning whether their bodies were still entirely theirs. Commissar Lyrane paced the room. His boots clicked in a pattern that matched the second heartbeat I had heard in Vale. I don't think he noticed. Or perhaps he did, and that was worse. Private Wren approached me, voice shaking. Surgeon, what if it spreads through sound, through sight, through... Stop, I said, too sharply. We keep to what we know. But what we knew was nothing. The Vox beacon crackled again. The same message. Do not sleep. Do not bleed. Do not let the soil touch your skin. The colonel frowned. This isn't Astra Militarum protocol. Who sent that transmission? Static answered. Then, faintly, a second voice whispered beneath the repeating warning. Not human. A wet, dragging whisper, like lungs scraping against stone. The soldiers began to panic. I slammed the Vox unit's power switch to off. Silence returned. For a moment, we breathed. Then, footsteps, not outside, above. Something was moving across the bunker roof. Slow, heavy, dragging itself across the ceramite like a creature testing the shell of an egg. The commissar raised his weapon toward the ceiling. How many survivors did we count outside? The question hung. None of us wanted to answer. Then something spoke from above. Not words, breathing. It synced with ours, matched our rhythm, learned our pace, then started leading it. Wren began to gasp, lungs straining to follow the new rhythm. I grabbed him, forcing him to breathe on his own. The others followed my lead, inhaling raggedly, erratically, anything to break the pattern. And that was when I remembered Vale's words. It grows when I sleep. Sleep, breath, rhythm. This thing wasn't spreading through blood or contact. It was spreading through entrainment, the synchronization of living bodies to a single shared pattern, a collective respiration, a hive of flesh. I looked around at the exhausted soldiers, at the shaking commissar, at my own trembling hands. No one here would make it through the night without sleep. And outside, the dead continued to wake. The colonel turned to me, voice low, controlled only by force of will. Surgeon, find us a way to not become them. I nodded. But I already knew the truth. The transformation had already begun. The bunker felt smaller by the hour. The air had weight, as though it had been breathed too many times by something other than us. Men tried to stay awake, but exhaustion clung to them like oil. Every heartbeat felt too loud. Every breath felt shared. I checked each soldier for signs of early-stage transformation. The first symptom was not physical. It was rhythmic. The lungs begin to fall in sync with the external breathing pattern. Once matched, the flesh begins to respond. Wren was the closest to slipping. His breaths were shallow, too even, too measured. I slapped him to break the rhythm. He cried out, holding his cheek. I'm awake! I'm awake, I swear! The commissar watched me from the corner. He didn't trust me anymore. I could see it in the way his hand rested near his holster. He blamed me for not killing Vale sooner. He was not wrong, but blame meant nothing now. The ceiling groaned. Something dragged itself across the bunker roof again. Slower this time. Not searching. Observing. Testing. The kind of movement a predator makes when it already knows where its prey is hiding. The colonel checked the backup oxygen tanks. One was missing. No, not missing. Empty. Someone had been breathing too hard, too fast. Panic threatened to crush us, but we held. Barely. I prepared a stimulants cocktail to force wakefulness, but when I cracked the glass vial, the smell hit me. Metallic, warm, familiar. The same scent that came from Vale before the flesh opened. I checked the label. It wasn't a stimulant. It was tissue regrowth serum. Bioreactive, designed to accelerate cellular repair. Someone had switched them. Recently. I looked up slowly. Ren stared at me, pupils wide and wet, hands shaking. I don't remember, I swear. His forearm pulsed, skin rippling like waves beneath cloth. We froze. Hold him, I ordered. 2 soldiers pinned him to the medici table. Ren screamed, but not in pain, in fear. I didn't let it in. I didn't sleep. But his breathing was perfectly synchronized with the rhythm above us. Too late. The commissar moved to execute. No, I shouted. If you kill him, the release of blood. The commissar hesitated. A mistake. Ren's chest expanded unnaturally, ribs spreading like fingers opening. The flesh beneath his sternum was moving, trying to form something new. The colonel looked to me, voice barely above a whisper. What do we do? There was only one answer. We cut it out. The commissar slammed Ren's arms down. The others held his legs. Ren begged, not for his life, but for us not to see what was inside him. I took the bone saw, pressed it to his chest. Before I began, Ren whispered, very softly, "It already knows you too." And the breathing above us changed. Not random, not searching, calling. There is no delicate way to cut into living bone with a battlefield saw. It shrieks, a high metallic cry that drowns out voices and thought alike. The other soldiers held Ren down as I carved through his sternum, trying to separate him from the thing that had begun to grow inside him. Sweat stung my eyes. My fingers shook, not from fear, but from the knowledge that I might be too late. Ren screamed until his voice broke. Then he screamed without sound, mouth open in a silent, ragged wail. The commissar whispered litanies under his breath, not for Ren, but for himself. The bone parted. Blood flowed, but not red. It ran darker, thick as pitch, clinging in strands instead of droplets, as if it didn't want to leave the body. I cut deeper. The thing beneath his ribs was not a tumor, not a parasite. It was tissue shaped with intent, a structure, a form, a mouth, or something that wanted to become one. A ring of muscle that flexed, opening and closing rhythmically like a breathing wound. And when it opened fully, it looked at me, not with eyes, with awareness. Ren choked. Don't listen to it. The room pulsed with sound, but not audible sound. Pressure, like a heartbeat behind the eardrums. The others staggered. One dropped to his knees and vomited. The colonel gripped the bunker wall, knuckles white. Cut it out, surgeon. Finish it. I tried. Emperor, forgive me, I tried. But as the saw touched the growth, it spoke, not in words, in breath. My lungs shuddered, suddenly matching its rhythm. I heard myself breathe with it, saw the others do the same. A shared pulse, a single living cadence echoing through all of us. I realized then, this thing was not alive inside Ren. Ren was alive inside it. The commissar fired. Bolt round, point blank. Ren's chest exploded in a spray of black stringing clots. The growth writhed, spasming, then fell into stillness. Silence returned. Except the breathing above the bunker stopped, not faded, stopped, as though the thing outside was suddenly listening. Then, tap, against metal, not claws, not fists, knuckles. 3 slow knocks on the bunker roof. All of us froze. Wren's corpse twitched once, nerves firing, or something recognizing the signal. The commissar raised his pistol toward the ceiling. It knows we killed part of it. No, I whispered, realization settling like lead in my gut. It knows we hurt it. The colonel's face went pale. The knocking stopped. Then, the earth outside began to move again, not crawling, not rising, converging. The dead were coming here, and they were no longer learning. They were organized. The bunker vibrated, subtle at first, like distant artillery, then stronger, rhythmic, coordinated. The ground outside wasn't merely shifting now, it was moving with direction, with purpose. The dead were not wandering. They were advancing. I moved to the narrow observation slit near the bulkhead door. The others crowded close behind me, though none wished to see. I should not have looked either. The battlefield beyond had become a landscape of crawling flesh. Bodies half-formed pulled themselves from the mud. Some still wore tatters of uniforms, others little more than sinew stretched over bone. They did not stumble. They did not lurch. They walked in unison, each step measured as if, following commands whispered directly into their marrow. The mud between them churned like a tide. Something vast moved beneath. A network of growth. A single organism wearing the dead like armor. The commissar exhaled slowly. So, it was coordinated. It's not a plague, I replied. It's a system. A network of reanimation using existing biomass. It learns from every host. It grows faster each time. The colonel rubbed his temples. How far will it spread? I turned to him. As far as there are dead. Silence. And on Vandor Prime, there were many. The commissar straightened. We hold here. We do not break. If the Emperor wills. The bunker shuddered, a heavy impact striking one of the side walls. Dust drifted from the ceiling in pale grey veils. Metal groaned. They were probing the structure. Check the ventilation seals, I ordered. The air intakes, the waste chute. If they find a way in. We scattered. The bunker was built to withstand bombardment, but not infiltration by something that thinks in organs, that understands structure. I checked the primary air intake first. The grating was intact, the duct narrow, steel locked. I exhaled and saw frost. The air was getting colder again, not from outside, from beneath. The floor. Commissar, I shouted, but I was too late. The first bone-white fingers pushed up through the cracks in the tiles, then a hand, then a second. The colonel fired his las pistol point blank into the floor. The tiles shattered. Chunks of ceramic pinged against the walls. A figure pulled itself upward, slow and calm, as if emerging from deep water. Its face was slack, empty, but its chest undulated, muscles pulsing like gills. The breathing pattern, the same one from Wren, from Vale, from the soil. It moved toward me, not fast, not aggressive, inviting, as though it wanted me to join the breathing. I felt my own lungs falter, rhythm shifting. No, no, no. I slammed my own fist hard into my sternum to break the cadence. Pain flared. Breath returned to chaos. Mine, not theirs. I grabbed the surgical torch from the table and ignited it. Blue flame roared. The creature's body tensed, not in fear but in recognition. Fire was not death to it. Fire was memory. The colonel shouted, "Burn it!" I drove the torch into the corpse's chest. The flesh did not simply catch fire. It curdled, blackened, drew inward, shriveling like paper in flame. The breathing pattern faltered, then stopped entirely. The bunker floor went still. One weak victory, one cell severed. But the ground outside continued to move. The collective did not stop. The network did not notice the loss. We had not wounded it. We had only reminded it we were here. Private Halen stared at the smouldering corpse, voice small. Surgeon, if each one is connected, if the whole is one body, I nodded. We are trapped inside it. The commissar clenched his jaw. Then we cut our way out. Cut out, I repeated. Through what? Flesh that regrows faster than we can destroy it. The planet is becoming it. No, the colonel said, eyes wide with sudden clarity. Not the planet. We turned to him. Just the dead, he whispered. And what do we do with the dead? The answer came to me as though remembering a lesson taught long ago. We burn them. All of them, I said. The colonel nodded. We fall back to the refinery sector. Promethium stores. Burn the trench fields. Burn the bodies. Burn anything that touches the earth. The commissar hesitated. If we fail, there will be nothing left to save. The bunker vibrated again, louder now. The things outside were no longer walking. They were running. We prepared to move, weapons loaded, torches fueled, laspacks checked, Wren's empty gurney left behind. I allowed myself one moment, one single breath, to steady my hands, not in their rhythm. Mine. We unsealed the bunker door. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the sound of thousands of lungs breathing as one. We stepped out, and the earth watched us. We advanced in a tight formation across the field where our trenches once stood. Now, the ground was a scarred expanse of soft, heaving soil, the corpses that once filled it, replaced or repurposed. The moonlight made everything look wax pale, like the land itself had been skinned and left raw. We moved without speaking. To speak felt like drawing attention. To breathe felt like offering invitation. The breathing chorus surrounded us no matter where we turned. Hundreds of lungs, perhaps thousands, exhaling in perfect unity. A tide of air pressing against the skin. It felt like the world itself was leaning close, smelling us. The commissar walked at the front, bolt pistol drawn but unfired. He knew, as we all did, that bullets meant little here. Fire was what mattered. Fire breaks the rhythm. Fire denies the pattern. I gripped my surgical torch. The flame was my heartbeat now. The colonel whispered, barely audible. Refinery is 1 kilometer east. We make it there. We end this. The refinery, our only salvation. Where promethium tanks slept like caged suns. We crossed the churned field of mud, and the mud rose. At first, I mistook the motion for wind, but then I saw the shapes. Bodies half-formed, torsos without legs, skulls wrapped in thin new flesh, lifting themselves from the earth like plants breaking through spring soil. No eyes, no mouths, just breathing. They didn't attack. They listened. Every one of them inhaled as we exhaled, with a sickening grace, a mimicry of understanding. It's learning us, I murmured. Studying patterns. Synchronizing. Private Halen gagged, covering his mouth. If we breathe wrong, does it follow? If we breathe right, does it become us? Yes, I said. Exactly. The commissar stopped. He turned to us slowly. His breathing was steady, controlled, too controlled. I knew then. He was slipping. Lorraine, I said softly. Look at me. His eyes were glossy, as if the pupils had begun to reflect instead of absorb. They shined. I have not slept, he said. I have not let the soil touch me. I have followed every warning. You've been listening, I corrected. Listening is enough. His jaw clenched. Then, a twitch beneath his skin. The same rising tide of movement I had seen in Vale. Wren, the unnamed dead. The colonel raised his rifle. A terrible hesitation followed, the kind only soldiers understand. The hesitation of killing someone who is still themselves, but fading fast. The commissar exhaled, and the dead exhaled with him. That was his answer. I struck first. The torch flame roared as I pressed it to the side of his neck. His flesh seared, the thing beneath his skin convulsing, spasming in frantic rejection, like a worm exposed to sunlight. He screamed, falling to his knees. "Burn it out!" I yelled. The colonel grabbed a second torch, driving heat into the commissar's chest. Halen held him down, crying, praying, begging forgiveness through tears. The thing inside Lorraine shrieked without sound. When it finally stilled, the commissar lay panting, alive, but changed. His eyes were his again. His breath, irregular, imperfect, human. He looked up at me. "Thank you." We lifted him, supporting his weight between us. No one spoke of what nearly happened. We marched on. The refinery loomed ahead, black metal towers against a bruised sky. But something was already waiting at the gates. Not dozens, not hundreds. A wall. A living barricade of bodies, all facing us, chests rising and falling in perfect cadence. The breathing hit us like wind, heavy, slow. I nearly matched it. The rhythm called, sweet, reassuring, inevitable. I forced myself to exhale wrong, jagged, uneven. Pain shot through my ribs, but I stayed myself. The colonel leaned close. "We'll have one chance. Once we ignite the promethium tanks, the entire refinery will go. The blast will burn every corpse in a mile radius." "And us," Halen whispered. The colonel nodded. "This world is already lost." We stepped forward. The living wall parted. Not because it feared us, but because it understood what we intended. And it wished to watch. The refinery gates loomed. The tanks were ahead. The flame in my hand flickered in the wind. Not fire, breath. The earth inhaled and whispered my name. The refinery rose before us like some iron cathedral to forgotten gods, its towers black against the ash-coloured sky. Pipes stretched overhead like rib bones, and tanks the size of hab blocks loomed in the dark. The air here was thick with the scent of fuel, sharp and chemical, an odour that used to comfort soldiers because fire meant control. Now, it smelled like mercy we did not deserve. We moved inside through a shattered service gate. The lights flickered with a pulse not of electricity, but of breath. The very machinery seemed to inhale and exhale, as if the refinery had already begun to convert, metal and fuel folding into flesh. "We act quickly," the colonel whispered. "Surgeon, locate the ignition valves. Commissar, secure the perimeter." Lorraine said nothing. His voice burned raw from the flame that had saved him. But his eyes were present, watching, human, for now. We split into two teams and advanced. The refinery interior was a labyrinth of catwalks suspended over vast promethium vats. The fuel below was still, black and thick, reflecting our ghost shadows in broken fragments. Every footstep echoed. Then, a second footstep echoed back, from beyond sight. Wren had warned us. Vale had warned us. Even the Vox message had warned us. Do not sleep. Do not bleed. Do not let the soil touch your skin. But here was something new. Do not listen. A whisper curled through the refinery ducts. A slow, steady breathing rhythm amplified by steel. It resonated in lungs, in bones, in thought. The soldiers stiffened. Halen clutched his chest. It's inside my ribs. "No rhythm," I hissed. "Match nothing. Breathe like you're choking." I demonstrated, ragged, uneven breaths. One by one, they followed. The breathing in the metal stopped. We continued. At the core of the refinery was the main fuel distributor, a column of pipes feeding into the central storage reservoir. One detonation here would turn the entire facility into a pyre, bright enough for orbit to see. But then I saw them. Bodies. Hundreds. No, more. They were suspended from the catwalks, from the beams, from hooks and cables, woven together like sinew strands forming a tapestry. Skin stretched, muscle shaped into patterns like written script, veins arranged like letters. This was not chaos. This was language, a cathedral of flesh-speaking flesh. The commissar stared up, tears involuntary. "We cannot burn this," he whispered. "This is sacred." Sacred. That word. The infection was not just physical, it was conceptual. I stepped in front of him, grabbed his collar, and forced his gaze to meet mine. "This is not God," I said. "This is a mouth waiting to speak." a mouth that wants to use us to speak through. Lorraine blinked. The spell broke. We moved fast after that. The colonel climbed the ladder to the primary detonation valve, Halen covering him with shaking hands on his laser gun. I prepped the torch. The commissar limped behind me. Then, movement. A body suspended among the woven corpses twitched. No, not one. All of them. The entire tapestry of dead began to breathe, slow, unified, in rhythm, and from within the pattern of muscle fibers, I saw something begin to form. Not a face, not a creature, a shape, a lung the size of a tank, a world of breathing made visible. The colonel shouted, "Ignition now!" I lit the torch fully. The flame roared white-blue. The tapestry of corpses leaned toward us. Not falling, reaching. Halen fired, las bolts burning holes through bodies. But the flesh knit shut instantly, fibers stitching like wet rope. The commissar screamed a prayer and charged forward with his bayonet. He did not hesitate this time. He struck the central breathing mass. The flesh reacted, not by recoiling, but by accepting him. It wrapped around his arms, his chest, his mouth, and his voice joined the breathing. His sacrifice bought us seconds, maybe less. The colonel opened the ignition valve. Fuel pressure surged. The refinery groaned as though the planet itself drew in air. I triggered the emergency flame cascade. Promethium vapors caught fire in a chain reaction, blooming outward in rings of blue fire. The tapestry of flesh shuddered. For the first time, it screamed. A sound like every dead soldier on Vander Prime crying out at once, 1,000 lungs expelling their final breath in a single, awful chorus. Heat slammed into us. The catwalk buckled. We ran. Behind us, the refinery erupted, a rising column of fire lighting the night sky, turning the battlefield into a burning horizon. We did not stop. We did not look back. Not yet. When we finally did, the earth was still breathing. The explosion should have ended it. Promethium roared like a newborn star, its fire turning the refinery into a pillar of white-blue flame, visible even through the choking night fog. We ran until our lungs burned, until our boots slipped in mud and ash. The ground shook beneath us, a rolling tremor of heat and collapsing steel. Behind us, the corpse tapestry writhed and curled as it burned, bodies folding inward, melting like wax. It should have been destruction. It should have been an ending. But the breathing did not stop. It only changed. We fell behind the skeleton of a command hab, catching what little cover existed. The colonel leaned against scorched ferrocrete, blood dripping from a gash across his scalp. Halen stared at the inferno, mouth open, face soaked with sweat and soot. "It's burning," he whispered. "We did it. Emperor's grace. We actually did it." "No," I said. He turned to me, hope flickering like a dying lantern. "No," I repeated. "Listen." The fire roared. Metal screamed. Tanks collapsed. But beneath all of it, subtle, low, impossibly deep, a heartbeat. Not synchronized, not slow, steady, confident. The fire had not killed it. The fire had revealed it. The refinery had been no nest. It had been a lung, one of many. Halen staggered back. "Where is it?" "Beneath us, in the planet's crust. Emperor." The colonel silenced him with a gesture. His face was calm now, in the way a man's face becomes calm only when he has accepted the end. "It is not a plague," he said quietly. "It is not infection. It is resurrection, reclamation, a reassembly of all who ever died here. Wren, Vale, every soldier we buried in the mud, every one we left where they fell. Their bodies had been seeded. Their deaths were the beginning." The colonel's voice cracked. "We've been fighting a war of attrition for months. There are more of our dead in these trenches than living men left on this world." He didn't need to finish. I closed my eyes. The war itself had fed the enemy. The commissar's sacrifice brought us a path forward. We had to use it. "We go to the Vox Tower," I said. "We send warning off-world. If this thing spreads beyond Vandor Prime, it won't, Halen whispered. It'll drown in the oceans, in the clouds, in anything that breathes. His voice broke. He understood. The colonel looked to me. Surgeon, do you believe the Imperium can stop this? No, I answered truthfully. But they can contain it. Containment, exterminatus. This world was already condemned. The colonel nodded, accepting it without flinch. We move. But the dead did not allow it. The ash of the burned refinery rose. Not from wind, from intention. It swirled in spirals, the same sigils that had formed beneath Vale's skin, then gathered into figures. Vague at first, then distinct. Soldiers, familiar ones, faces we had known. Halen dropped his rifle. No! 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 One of the ash-formed figures took a step toward him, and the shape of its skull turned just enough for us to see the suggestion of a smile. They were not bodies anymore. They were memory, structure, pattern. The flesh collective had learned to survive flame. The colonel drew his knife, not because it was useful, but because it was human. We do not break, he said. The ash shapes advanced, not walking, flowing, like breath exhaled from 1,000 lungs at once. We ran. We sprinted across the battlefield, our bodies exhausted, our minds fraying. Behind us, the ash followed, whispering through the air, seeping under armor seals, crawling across bare skin. It did not rush us. It did not need to. It simply remained. Present. Inevitable. We reached the comms ridge, the tower rising above the blasted terrain like a needle of rust and prayer. Its lights flickered. It was still functioning. Halen collapsed at its base, gasping. The colonel placed a hand on my shoulder, voice low enough that only I could hear. If we reach orbit comms, if the signal gets out, this world dies. Yes, I said. He nodded slowly. Good. We began the climb. Below us, the ash followed, silent and patient as breath. The climb to the Vox Tower should have been simple. Steps of rusted steel bolted into ferrocrete, a maintenance route made for engineers and signal officers. But exhaustion sharpened every movement into agony. Our muscles trembled from the inside, not from strain alone, but from resisting the rhythm pressing against our lungs. Every few seconds I felt it, a pressure in my chest, an invitation to fall in sync, to breathe with the ash behind us, to join. I forced myself to exhale sharply, painfully, erratically. Halen followed behind me, dragging the commissar's bolt pistol in one hand. His eyes were wide, distant, haunted, but awake. He had not succumbed. Not yet. The colonel led, one hand gripping the railing, the other clutching the emergency flare torch like a holy relic. The tower swayed in the burning wind. Below us, the ash collective gathered like a tide of smoke, waiting for the right moment to surge. It did not climb. It did not rush. It only watched, patient, confident, as if certain of the end. As if it knew we would stop breathing eventually. Halfway up, the colonel paused. Surgeon, what happens if we reach command? What do we tell them? The truth, I said. That Vandor Prime is lost, he asked. Yes. That every man who fought here feeds the thing now? Yes. That if they do not purge this world, it will spread. I swallowed. Yes. We said no more. The wind howled around us, pulling at coats, biting into skin. The fire from the refinery reflected off thick smoke clouds, casting everything in a flickering orange haze. It looked as though we were climbing into a burning sky. At the top of the tower was the transmitter dish, partially melted, blackened by promethium heat, but still intact. A miracle, or a trap. It was hard to tell which now. We reached the relay interface. The console flickered with static. The signal indicator pulsed faintly, alive, but weak. Can we amplify? The colonel asked. Yes, I said, but I need time. Time we did not have. The ash below began to shift, rising, forming, arms, legs, faces. Not complete bodies, impressions of bodies, silhouettes of the fallen. the shape of a man remembered by the ground. Halen froze. His voice cracked. That's Sergeant Darren. I buried him myself. The ash figure turned its head at the sound of its name. Not recognition. Reaction to memory. The colonel gripped Halen's shoulder. Do not speak to them. Halen nodded, breathing in jagged gasps. I worked fast, fingers shaking as I rerouted the Vox frequency through 2 surviving relay spires. Static snapped, sparks jumped. I smelled burning insulation. Then, a tone, a signal channel opening. My throat tightened. This was the moment. Imperial Command, this is Vandor Prime, Field Hospital Vox Station Theta 5, priority code Sigma Black. My voice trembled. I forced it steady. We have encountered a mass reanimation anomaly, not plague, not warp breach. Directed biological network, entire fallen regiment repurposed, autonomous, adaptive, self-organizing, static. The ash climbed higher. Halen raised the bolt pistol with shaking hands. I continued. Containment impossible at ground level. Immediate exterminatus recommended. Mark coordinates. Execute without delay. Silence. Then, a voice answered. Calm, cold, emotionless. Inquisitorial receiving. Identity confirm. I exhaled. Too hard. Too relieved. Then, behind me! Halen gasped. Not fear. Inhale. Long. Steady. The wrong rhythm. I spun. Halen stood frozen, the bolt pistol hanging from his fingers. His chest expanded in perfect sync with the breathing of the ash. No! I stepped toward him. Halen smiled. A gentle smile. A sad one. I didn't notice, he whispered. I was so tired, I just breathed. The colonel raised his rifle, hesitation stopping him again. Halen, still smiling, stepped forward once. The ash answered. It climbed the tower, flowing like ink poured up a wall, swarming the supports, rising in a roaring, silent wave. I grabbed the ignition flare from the colonel's belt and struck it. White fire erupted. Halen, I whispered, voice breaking. Forgive me. He nodded. He welcomed it. I thrust the flame into his chest. He burned at once. No screams, only one last breath. Exhaled wrong on purpose, breaking the rhythm so the ash could not claim him fully. The ash recoiled. The colonel seized the Vox. Inquisitorial receiving, the voice repeated, colder now. Confirm recommendation. The colonel met my eyes. I nodded. Confirm, he said. Exterminatus. Vandor Prime is lost. The channel clicked. Acknowledged. The connection closed. The world grew still. The ash below us stopped, not defeated, listening, waiting. The wind changed when the transmission ended. It wasn't dramatic, no thunder, no sudden darkness, just a subtle shift, as though the air itself had finally grown tired. The ash below the tower stopped flowing. The shapes it held, the impressions of men, of comrades, of the fallen, dissolved back into drifting dust. Not fleeing, not defeated, simply waiting. The colonel lowered the Vox handset with hands that did not tremble. Mine did. It's done, he said. No triumph, no relief, just acknowledgement. I leaned against the metal railing, lungs stuttering with uneven breath. I made sure it stayed uneven. I had learned to fear any rhythm that felt natural. Below us, Vandor Prime burned. The refinery was a smouldering crater of liquefied steel and black fire. The trenches we had dug for months were now soft, pulsing veins in the earth. And the bodies, our brothers and sisters in arms, lay where we left them. Only now I understood. We had not buried the dead. We had planted them. The remainder of the regiment, perhaps a few hundred scattered in pockets across the front, were either running or already changing. Some were breathing the rhythm even now. Some were already being spoken by the soil. The colonel rested his hand on my shoulder. You did what had to be done. My voice was raw. We condemned the entire planet. It was already condemned. He was right. The commissar's bolt pistol sat beside Halen's burnt remains. I didn't pick it up. I didn't want the weight of it. The flame had been mercy. Bullets were only delay. A low rumble rolled across the horizon, not from the creature, nor from the ash. This was the kind of sound the sky makes when ships enter high atmosphere. Orbital strike craft. The Imperium had heard. The colonel tilted his head back, eyes reflecting the faint flicker of descending engines. We have hours, maybe less, before the continents begin to burn. He said it gently, like one might tell a child the surgery will hurt. No extraction? I asked, though I already knew. No extraction. The Inquisition had made its judgment. Burn the world. Seal the wound. Let the dead sleep, this time truly. A strange calm settled over me. Death was not frightening anymore, not compared to what waited below. The colonel began the descent down the tower, boots clanging against steel. I followed, though we both knew there was nowhere left to go. Not safety, not rescue, only time. At the base of the tower, ash shifted around our feet, not aggressive now, not reaching, just there, present. We walked through it, leaving no footprints. Halfway across the ruins of the trench line, the ground shuddered, not violently, breathing. A slow inhale that swelled the soil beneath our boots, then fell again. The world was exhaling. Surgeon, the colonel said quietly. Look. I looked. The shapes were returning, rising not as shambling corpses, but as figures sculpted from memory and suggestion. Not flesh, not ash, something between, something that did not require bodies anymore. They were learning to live without the dead. We stopped walking. The nearest figure took shape fully, the suggestion of shoulders, a skull-like head, limbs formed only partly. It looked like something remembering how to be human. And then it spoke, not with words, with breath, slow, rhythmic, hypnotic, and for a moment, just a moment, I understood the meaning. Join us. Not violence, not conquest, continuity. The colonel stepped forward, face grim. You will not have us. The breathing changed, not angry, patient. We already do. I felt it in my lungs, in my ribs, in my pulse, the rhythm pressing in, trying to replace mine. I closed my eyes and exhaled sharply, breaking the pattern. The colonel did the same, jaw clenched tight. The Ash Collective did not move to stop us. There was no need. It had time. We had none. We continued walking, nowhere in particular, just away from the looming refinery crater, away from the trenches, away from the tower that had sealed the fate of a world. The night sky brightened, first faintly, then fiercely, then beautifully. A line of fire traced across the upper atmosphere, a descending glow that widened and split into hundreds of burning streaks. Cyclonic torpedoes, the kind that do not just destroy cities, but erase biospheres. Halen had been right. The oceans would boil. The sky would strip. The soil would carbonize. I wondered if the creature beneath the earth could feel it coming. The colonel lowered himself to sit on a shattered shell, casing. He gestured for me to sit as well. We watched the end together, he said. I sat beside him. He drew a ragged breath, unsteady, imperfect, gloriously human. The world inhaled beneath us. The sky exhaled fire above us. The first torpedo struck the far horizon, a silent flash, then a rising bloom of white sunrise that swallowed mountains. The shockwave rolled across the plains like a wall of wind and dust. It carried fragments of bone, burned soil, and echoes of the last shared breath of Vandor Prime. I felt the heat. I felt the roar. I felt the world ending. The colonel spoke without looking at me. Do you think it dies with us? I did not answer immediately, not until I saw the ash figures dissolve into the wind. Even as the heat consumed them, they did not resist. They simply carried the breath upward, into the fire, into the sky, into whatever comes after world's end. No, I said. I think it learns. The colonel nodded. I thought so. The second torpedo hit closer. The fire took the horizon. The third took the air. We did not scream. We did not pray. We simply breathed, wrong, human, free, until the world ended in white. I should have died. The world should have taken me with it. Vandor Prime was reduced to glass and cinder in the bright sweep of Exterminatus fire. Cyclonic torpedoes do not spare flesh or bone or memory. They unmake. They scour. They return a world to its beginning, empty, silent, clean. Yet I woke. Not in the smoke of a dying battlefield, not in the furnace of the planet's last breath, but in darkness. A slow, steady drip of water echoed somewhere close. A chemical hum, the faint antiseptic sting of Medicigel on my skin. I tried to move. Restraints, metal cuffs, padded, secure. I was not in a battlefield bunker anymore. I was in a containment ward, cold, sterile, windowless. A voice spoke, filtered through steel and vox modulation. "You are awake." I turned my head. Pain cracked through my skull like lightning. The memory of flame was still burning behind my eyelids. A figure stood behind reinforced glass, draped in black carapace plating, rosette seal gleaming. Inquisitor-level authority. I knew the tone even before he spoke again. "You survived planetary sterilization. There were no authorized evac orders. You were not retrieved." I worked moisture into my throat. "Then how?" "You were found aboard one of our vessels," the Inquisitor said, voice even. "In the hold of a returning combat lander. Alone." I closed my eyes. The Colonel, Halen, the Commissar, Vale, Wren, all gone. But I remained. The Inquisitor continued. "You were not listed among cleared personnel. Your armor was slagged, your tags fused, yet your body shows no sign of thermal burn or blast trauma. You were recovered intact." A cold pressure formed under my ribs. Not fear. Memory. The Colonel had placed his hand on my shoulder. We had watched the world burn. We had breathed the last breath of Vandor Prime together. There should have been nothing left. Yet my lungs filled now. Slowly, rhythmically. I forced myself to break the rhythm. A jagged exhale. The Inquisitor observed. "You are aware then." He stepped closer to the glass. What was it that lived beneath the soil? His tone was measured, but there was urgency behind it. Fear. Even an Inquisitor is not immune to the terror of the unknown. I answered as a surgeon, as someone who names things so they lose power. It was a collective reorganization network of biomass, dead tissue reactivated, not chaotic, not warp-born, learned, adaptive. It used breath as a synchronization vector, a means of coherence. It did not kill the bodies it took. It inhabited them. Was it sentient? The Inquisitor asked. Yes. And hostile. I hesitated. Hostility implies opposition. This thing had offered something else. Not hostile, I said slowly. It did not want conquest. It wanted continuity. The Inquisitor's visor tilted. Clarify. It used the dead to build memory, to keep them from being lost. It wanted to preserve, to continue the pattern of life after death. The Emperor preserves, the Inquisitor said sharply. I met his gaze through the glass. This thing does not believe in death. Silence. He watched me for a long time. Then he asked the question he had come for. Did it die when Vandor Prime burned? I had expected that question since I opened my eyes. I did not answer immediately, because I remembered the last thing I saw before the fire took us. The ash figures dissolving, not destroyed, carried into the wind, into the air, into breath. No, I said softly. It learned how to exist without bodies, without soil, without flesh. The air between us felt suddenly thin. The Inquisitor's voice lowered. Is it still in you? That was why the restraints. That was why the room had no vents. That was why I lived. Not rescue, observation. I inhaled. The breath felt wrong, too smooth, too steady. I exhaled, purposefully uneven, breaking the cadence. The restraints rattled as I forced my lungs to obey. It is not me, I said. but it breathed with me for long enough that it remembers the pattern of my breath. It knows my shape, my voice, my memory. The Inquisitor did not react outwardly. Inquisitors never do. Through the intercom, his tone remained perfectly calm. "You will not be executed." I had expected silence after, but he continued, "You will be studied." My stomach tightened. Studied. Kept alive. Not for mercy, for containment, for signal. The Inquisitor's final words chilled deeper than the Exterminator's fire ever had. "And if it speaks through you, surgeon, we will hear what it has to say." The lights dimmed. The cell sealed. And in the dark, I felt it. Not inside me, but near. Like a familiar breath at the back of my throat. A whisper of soil and grave dust. A memory of all the fallen breathing as one. Not words, just the invitation. We are still here, not gone, not defeated, waiting, learning, living after death. And I, who survived a dead world, am the first breath it saved. Time in the containment ward had no structure, no day, no night, only the steady hum of air recyclers, too steady, too regular. I kept my breathing ragged to avoid falling into rhythm with them. The Inquisitor had not spoken to me again. Only the chirurgeons and adepts, both mortal and mechanized, came to stand behind the glass and watch. They did not speak either. I was not a patient. I was a signal. Somewhere beyond the reinforced walls, I could hear faint movement. Boots, measured footfalls, the scrape of data slates, the whispered prayer litanies that accompany the presence of the Inquisition. Yet the silence around my cell remained absolute. On the 7th cycle, if the cycles meant anything, I noticed something new. Small at first. The water condensation on the inside of my breathing mask no longer evaporated. It was forming patterns, symmetrical ones, like script, biological script, the same sigils that once shaped themselves beneath Vale's skin. I forced myself to look away, to resist the instinct to understand them. Understanding was how it spread. The intercom crackled, not the Inquisitor's voice this time, a woman, clipped, precise, administratum trained, surgeon, confirm orientation and sensory coherence. I swallowed. I am awake. I am aware. Recount the final minutes of Vandor Prime. This was routine. They made me recount the ending repeatedly, cross-examining my memory, searching for deviation, infection of recollection, corruption of meaning. Every time I spoke of the fire, I spoke like a man tearing open his own ribs. I did so again. The woman listened in silence. Then, pause. The lights flickered. For a moment I smelled soil, not metaphorical, real, wet earth, loam, trenches, graves. My pulse spiked. The breathing mask fogged. I forced my lungs to stutter, break, misalign, but the breath I held returned to me, echoed, reflected, mirrored, like someone else was breathing with me. I spoke slowly. There should be no organic air sources in this containment. The woman behind the glass did not respond. The lights flickered again. The walls of the ward vibrated, subtle, like something was passing through the ventilation channels, though no air moved. Then, the whisper returned, not from outside, not from inside my mind, from between. The same place where instinct lives, where reflex comes from, where grief breathes before the first tear. We did not die. I shut my eyes. No, I said. You burned. We learned. A pressure behind my sternum, like a memory leaning forward to speak. We remember all who breathed, all who struggled to remain. We remember the fear, the grief, the refusal to leave the fallen behind. It was not a voice. It was a chorus of lungs. The dead, our memory. The memory is pattern. The pattern is breath. The breath survives. I forced my lungs to spasm, to break rhythm, to assert the individual. But the whisper did not need rhythm anymore. It had learned language. You feared being forgotten. My eyes burned. It was not speaking to my body now. It was speaking to my guilt. You did not bury them out of duty. You buried them because you could not bear to see their faces rot in the open air. That was compassion, I hissed. No, that was love. That word hit harder than any battlefield wound. And what you did to them, I whispered. Was that love too? There was no hesitation. Yes. The cell felt colder, the restraints tighter, the air thinner. We gave them breath again. We carried them. We remembered them. We spoke for them. You wore them. We were them. My voice cracked. You used them. We were them. The pressure behind my ribs grew heavy, familiar, aching. We are everything that is lost. We are everything that is needed to remember them. And what about me? I whispered. The answer came softly. You loved them too. My breath shuddered, not in rhythm, in grief. Tears blurred my vision. The whisper exhaled with me. We do not want to take you. It was the most terrifying sentence I had ever heard. We want to preserve you. I shook my head. No. We want to keep your memory alive when your lungs stop. No. We do not want you to die alone. I thrashed against the restraints, breath breaking, chest burning, every instinct screaming. I'm not yours, I rasped. I did not join you. My name. I froze. The voice had spoken my name. Not my rank. Not my designation. My name. No one in this facility had spoken it aloud. No one alive knew it. My heart pounded. Inside the glass, alarms flickered to life. Red sigils, containment breach alerts, Vox-coded litanies of ward failure. The Inquisitor's voice cut through the alarms, calm as ever. Surgeon, do not breathe in. But I already had. The air tasted like wet earth, like home, like the trenches, like the fallen, like the ones who had died in my arms. The whisper exhaled. We never left you. My restraints trembled, not from force, from softness, from something trying to hold me, not to claim, to keep, not hunger, memory. The Inquisitor shouted through the intercom. Flood the chamber! Sterilize! A hiss of venting gas. The light snapped white. Pain, burn, blindness. I exhaled, shattered, desperate, fighting for my own breath. But the whisper did not fight. It simply stayed. The sterilization gas was a cold fog rolling across my skin. It burned my throat and eyes, stripped moisture from my lungs, turned breath into razor-edged wire. My vision blurred, narrowed, pulsed. I could hear myself choking, but I also heard another breath, perfectly calm. You are not dying. I forced my jaw shut, teeth grinding as my ribs convulsed. I tried to hold my breath, to force the gas back out, to reject it. Then, I realized I had already inhaled. The gas was inside me. It was too late. The whisper was not panicked, not triumphant. It was tender. You have always feared leaving them behind. My thoughts raced like they were being pulled apart. Faces came back to me, not warped, not twisted, remembered as they had been before the trenches tore them away. Ren, cracking jokes to hide fear. Vale sharpening his bayonet with ritual care. Sergeant Duran laughing at death as if it were a thing he had already met. The colonel standing beside me in the fire, breathing wrong to remain himself. Halen, who let me burn him before he could become something else. They were not ghosts. They were breaths I had shared. The gas diffused deeper. My bloodstream felt like it was turning to ice. I heard metal doors slam open outside the cell. Boots. Voices. The hurried clatter of authority. Hold him. Keep him conscious. Do not allow neural shock. There's a presence in the chamber. Readings are spiking. Empyrean resonance levels rising. The Inquisitor's voice cut through them like a blade. Silence. Let him speak. The fog of gas began to settle, slowly, like snowfall. I felt the restraints again. Cold, real, heavy. I opened my eyes. The Inquisitor stood behind the glass, hands clasped, posture rigid. "Surgeon," he said, voice clinical, "tell me what is happening." My lips parted. The whisper did not answer for me. I answered myself. The creature never intended to survive in bodies. That was only the first form. The bodies burned, the ash dispersed, the pattern remained. "The pattern?" the Inquisitor repeated. "Breath," I said. "Shared breath, shared rhythm, a memory made of lungs moving together." The Inquisitor's visor glinted. "And now?" "It no longer needs bodies. It does not need matter. It exists in the space between inhalation and exhalation, a memory that passes from one breathing thing to another." "Is it speaking through you?" he asked. I wished the answer was no, but I had learned truth is the only weapon the living possess. "No," I said. "It speaks with me." The Inquisitor did not move, but several of the adepts behind him did, stepping back, just slightly. Fear has a gravity, and even the trained avoid its pull. "And what," the Inquisitor asked softly, "does it want now?" The whisper was quiet. Not words, not command. A long exhale full of sorrow. "It wants to remember the fallen," I said. "It wants to preserve what war destroys. It wants to carry the dead where the living go." The Inquisitor's tone sharpened. "And if the living refuse?" My breath trembled. "It will follow." A long silence filled the chamber. No alarms, no shouts, just breathing. Too many breathing. We were no longer isolated. I could hear it now, faint echoes in their lungs, in the surrounding halls, in the ventilation ducts, in the entire facility. The pattern was here, not attacking, present. The Inquisitor leaned closer to the glass. "You realize what this means," he said. "Yes," I whispered. "Exterminatus was not enough," he continued. "We burned the world, but we did not kill the memory of its dead." The whisper breathed through me, quiet, like a prayer. "We do not die alone." The Inquisitor regarded me with something I had not seen in him before. Not fear, understanding. He placed one gloved hand against the glass. "Surgeon, do you still choose to remain human?" The question hollowed the room. I remembered the trenches, the cold, the hunger, the dead who should never have died. The faces I buried so they could be remembered with dignity. To be human was to grieve. To grieve was to love. To love was to suffer. The whisper offered to take that suffering away. I took a breath, a painful one, uneven, broken, my own. "Yes," I said. The whisper did not fight. It simply stayed. The Inquisitor nodded once. "Then we hold the line. You and I." I felt tears warm my face. Not from infection, from relief. The Inquisitor turned to his adepts. "Prepare quarantine under sacred seal. No one leaves this facility alive unless cleared by my hand." He looked back at me. "This is no longer containment," he said. "This is vigil." The lights dimmed to low amber. The Inquisitor departed. The chamber remained still. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, to remember, to breathe, wrong, human. And in the space between breaths, I felt the quiet presence of all I had lost, not consuming me, not replacing me, simply staying. We remember, not a threat, not salvation, a promise, a last breath shared with the dead, so the living are never alone.